There's a certain silence in the life of a woman who walks without a circle. No giggles to share at midnight. No hands to hold when the world falls apart. No one to say, I understand, even when she says nothing at all. And yet, there she stands, strong, elegant, quietly carrying stories no one hears, battles no one sees, and victories no one celebrates. But let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a woman who loved deeply, gave endlessly, and forgave quickly. She had friends who she would drop everything for. Late night calls, long drives, birthday surprises, emotional breakdowns. She was always there, always the shoulder, always the helper. But life, you see, has a funny way of revealing things, not always through words, but through absence. One by one, people disappeared. Not with conflict, not with arguments, but with silence. She texted. They replied late or not at all. She made plans. They were too busy. She gave effort. They gave excuses. At first, she blamed herself. Maybe I'm too much. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I'm the problem. But over time, as the loneliness grew louder, she learned something beautiful. It's better to walk alone in truth than together in illusion. Because what is friendship if not mutual care? What is sisterhood if only one heart beats in the relationship? What is support if it's only given but never received? We live in a world where people collect connections like trophies, followers, likes, contacts. But they forget that connection is not about numbers, it's about presence. Dear woman, if you have no friend today, don't be ashamed. Don't think you are unloved or forgotten. You are simply walking through a season where your heart is being preserved, not isolated. There's a kind of sacred solitude where the soul grows wiser, where the ears become sharper, not to gossip, but to inner guidance, where your tears don't fall in front of fake smiles, but in the quiet sanctuary of your own strength. You might not have a brunch buddy today, or a gossip partner, or a Sunday walk companion, but you have you, and maybe it's time to meet her again. Maybe it's time to remember the version of you who used to laugh without needing someone's approval, who used to dance even if no one clapped, who used to create, paint, write, build, not for validation, but for joy. Because you were never created to be a filler in someone else's void. You were created to be whole. And when a woman becomes whole, friendships don't define her, they enrich her. Let's be honest. Many women feel the pressure to be part of a group, a girl gang, a tribe, because society sells this idea that if you're alone, you're lacking. But that's not true. Some women are in groups and still feel lonelier than ever. Because sitting in a crowd means nothing if your soul feels unseen. The absence of friends doesn't always mean absence of love. Sometimes it means that the right kind of love is still on its way. But until then, invest in the greatest friendship of all, the one you have with yourself. Take yourself out for coffee. Write letters to your future. Celebrate your little wins. Laugh at your own jokes. Buy flowers for your room. Wear perfume even if no one's coming over. Because that's the energy of a woman who no longer waits for company to feel complete. And when you reach that level of peace, of wholeness, you'll notice something miraculous. You will attract people who don't come to take from your cup, but to pour into it. Real friends. The kind who text not only when they need something, the kind who remember your birthday without a Facebook reminder, the kind who ask, "Are you okay?" and wait to hear the real answer. But you must become that friend first. Be the woman who is kind even when no one's watching, who encourages other women without competition, who listens not just to reply, but to understand. Be the friend you wish you had, and one day someone will mirror that right back to you. You see, life has seasons. There's a season of noise, full of friends, laughter, group chats, spontaneous road trips. But there's also a season of quiet, where friendships fade and you're left with just yourself. Don't curse the quiet. In that silence, something beautiful is happening. You are becoming your own home. And when you finally have friends again, and you won't need them to fix you. You'll invite them into your already complete world, not because you're desperate, but because you want to share your joy. There's an old saying, if you can't enjoy your own company, why should others? So to the woman with no friend right now, your silence is not emptiness, it is sacred space. Fill it with faith. Fill it with gratitude. Fill it with the kind of love that doesn't disappear when people do. You are not alone. You are becoming. And when the time is right, the universe will send those who see you, not for what you can give, but for who you are. Until then, be proud of the woman who stands alone, not in bitterness, but in quiet beauty. Because a woman who has no friends, but still smiles, still gives, still loves, is the strongest woman of all. There are moments in a woman's life when silence feels heavier than noise, when rooms feel emptier despite the furniture, and when the world outside seems to carry on while her own heart quietly retreats into itself. But loneliness, though painful, isn't always a sign of something missing. It can also be a sign of something sacred being formed. It's easy to label it as lack of friendship, lack of community, lack of connection. But in truth, it's often not a lack at all. It's preparation, a soul deep preparation for becoming whole. Most people run from loneliness. They fill their calendars, scroll endlessly, and reach for quick companionship just to drown out that gnawing sense of solitude. But what if that solitude isn't meant to be escaped? What if it's an invitation? An invitation to meet yourself in the most intimate, unfiltered way possible. What if loneliness is the sacred space where healing begins? A woman who walks without friends is often seen with pity. Poor her, people say. She must be difficult, or sad, or broken. But they don't see the deeper story. They don't see the strength it takes to sit in silence without crumbling, to go days without a phone call and still carry herself with dignity, to walk into rooms alone and not shrink in shame. They don't see the quiet power being forged inside her. When friends vanish, when calls go unanswered, and when familiar faces drift into memory, what remains is the echo of her own voice. And that voice begins to matter. It's in those moments that she starts asking questions she never had time to ask. What do I want? What do I believe? What makes me feel alive? These aren't questions answered in crowds. They're answered in solitude. They're answered when all the external noise fades and the inner voice rises to the surface. This is where wholeness begins. Not with someone showing up to fill the void, but with the realization that the void was never really empty. It was space for her to grow, expand, and understand herself. Space to build a foundation that no friendship can provide and no relationship can replace. When you're alone, you start to notice the quiet things. The way the sun warms your skin. The way your own laughter sounds when you allow yourself joy. The way peace feels when you're not performing for anyone else. And in those still moments, something magical happens. You begin to feel complete, not because others validate you, but because you finally see the beauty in simply being who you are. This kind of wholeness isn't built overnight. It's carved out through the tears that no one sees, the prayers whispered into pillows, and the deep breaths taken in the face of yet another day without company. It's built through resilience, the kind that doesn't make headlines but changes lives. The resilience of continuing to show up even when no one is clapping. The resilience of loving yourself even when no one is watching. There is a difference between loneliness and aloneness. Loneliness feels like something is missing. Aloneness feels like something is being found. And the shift between the two is where the journey of wholeness unfolds. A woman who embraces her aloneness begins to unearth parts of herself she didn't know existed. Passions, talents, inner wisdom, gifts that had been buried under the noise of constant connection. Yes, we are created for community. Yes, friendships matter. But sometimes, before we are ready to receive them, we are called to be alone, not as punishment, but as preparation. So that when the right friendships arrive, we don't cling in desperation. We share from overflow. We don't beg for belonging. We invite it gently from a place of self-assured peace. The woman who once feared solitude becomes the woman who cherishes it. She no longer rushes to fill her weekends or prove her social worth. She walks slowly, intentionally, rooted in her own spirit. And when she meets others, it's no longer to be completed, it's to be complemented. In that place, friendship is no longer about survival. It becomes about celebration. But until then, loneliness must be honored for what it is, not a gap, but a garden. Not a failure, but a field. Not a punishment, but a process. And in that process, the most extraordinary kind of woman is born. The woman who is whole before the world ever notices. There's a deep ache in being around people who only love you halfway. A smile that doesn't quite reach their eyes. A hug that feels more like obligation than affection. Words that sound sweet but carry no weight. And slowly, almost without realizing it, a woman begins to shrink herself, speaking a little less, asking a little softer, loving a little quieter, just to maintain a connection that doesn't even nourish her. In those moments, being alone may seem scary, but it's far better than existing in the shadow of almost love. Half love is confusing. It's not cruel enough to walk away from, yet not kind enough to stay with. It leaves you questioning, doubting, wondering if the problem is you. You keep replaying conversations in your head, analyzing silences, making excuses for cancelled plans and delayed replies. You tell yourself they're just busy, they're just tired, they're just distracted. But deep down, you feel it. You're not their priority. You're just an option, a placeholder, a background character in a story where you should have been a main one. There comes a time in every woman's life when she must choose between the pain of being alone and the pain of being half seen. And though both are difficult, only one leads to healing. Because while aloneness can feel empty at first, it makes room for clarity. It gives you space to remember what real love should feel like. Safe, consistent, tender. Half love, on the other hand, starves your heart while pretending to feed it. It offers crumbs and calls it a feast. But you deserve more than breadcrumbs. You were never meant to survive on leftovers. Sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is walk away from the comfort of familiarity and step into the uncertainty of solitude. To say, I'd rather be alone than be almost loved. That decision doesn't come easily. It often comes with tears, trembling, and long nights wondering if you made the right choice. But with time, you start to see the truth. No one has the right to love you in fractions. No one has the right to borrow your warmth without giving any back. No one has the right to occupy space in your life if they're not fully present. Being alone doesn't mean being lonely. It means refusing to be tolerated when you long to be treasured. It means choosing your peace over someone else's convenience. It means learning to hold your own hand, to wipe your own tears, and to become the kind of woman who doesn't settle for surface level affection. It's not about being strong all the time, it's about being honest with yourself. Honest enough to say, this isn't love, this is performance. Or half love makes you perform, it makes you overextend. It convinces you that if you just try a little harder, be a little prettier, a little more agreeable, then maybe they'll finally see your worth. But real love doesn't need convincing. Real love shows up. Real love makes room. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink, it asks you to grow. And that kind of love can only enter your life once you've cleared out the illusions. You can't build a life on almosts. Almost supported, almost respected, almost chosen. That's not a foundation. It's a fracture. And a fractured foundation will always collapse under pressure. That's why being alone, as difficult as it might be, gives you a chance to rebuild. Not just your surroundings, but your standards, your self-respect, your sense of identity. You stop asking, why don't they love me? And start declaring, I am worthy of love that's whole. The truth is, the woman who chooses to be alone rather than half-loved is not bitter, she's brave. She's not cold, she's clear. She's not hard to love, she's no longer willing to beg for it. She understands that her heart is not a halfway house for people still deciding. She deserves someone who knows, who commits, who sees her as more than just a convenience. But until that person arrives, she will love herself fully, deeply, without hesitation. Being alone gives her that freedom, the freedom to rest, the freedom to heal, the freedom to stop explaining herself to people who never truly listened. She no longer walks into rooms trying to be liked. She walks in rooted in the truth of her own worth. And when she does, something shifts. She no longer chases. She no longer tolerates. She no longer waits. Because she knows now being alone is not a weakness. It's a declaration. A declaration that says, I am enough, even in my solitude. And that is far more powerful than any half love could ever be. There comes a point in every woman's life when she realizes that the companionship she's been searching for outside of herself must first be found within. It's a quiet awakening. A moment when the echoes of unanswered messages and the ache of being forgotten no longer sting as much, but begin to teach. It's when she looks in the mirror, not for flaws, but for familiarity, and begins to wonder, when did I stop being my own friend? That moment is not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. Because healing always starts with presence. And the first person who needs to show up for you is you. We often extend love, grace, encouragement, and patience to others that we withhold from ourselves. We cheer for our friends' dreams, wipe their tears, tell them to rest, remind them of their worth. But when it comes to our own struggles, we speak in the language of criticism and neglect. We call ourselves weak for being tired, dramatic for being emotional, selfish for setting boundaries. But if we spoke to others the way we sometimes speak to ourselves, we'd call it cruelty. So why do we tolerate it in the name of humility? Being the friend you wish you had means shifting the way you relate to yourself. It means being willing to sit with your own sadness without rushing to fix it. It means celebrating your victories, even if no one else claps. It means being loyal to your own heart in the way you've been loyal to others. It's waking up and saying, I've got you, even when the world forgets. Because the foundation of all relationships is the one you have with yourself. If that's fractured, every other connection becomes a compensation, not a celebration. It's easy to feel forgotten when no one calls. It's easy to feel invisible when your kindness goes unnoticed. But in those quiet spaces, you are being invited to turn inward, not in self-pity, but in self-reconnection. You're being asked to remember what you like, What brings you peace? What makes your soul light up? Because your identity is not found in someone else's attention. It's found in your ability to stand even when no one is standing with you. Take yourself on that walk. Brew your favorite tea just for you. Buy the book you've been eyeing. Wear the color that makes you smile. These aren't small things. They're sacred acts of self-companionship. They remind you that your joy isn't dependent on someone showing up for you. It's dependent on you showing up for yourself. Over and over again. There will be days when you'll miss having someone to vent to. Someone who remembers the dates that matter. Someone to laugh with when life feels too heavy. But instead of collapsing under that ache, let it lead you home. To yourself. Sit with your thoughts. Journal your prayers. Cry when it hurts and laugh when it heals. This is the groundwork of inner friendship. And it's not lonely, it's holy. When you become the friend you wish you had, your standards rise, not out of pride, but out of clarity. You stop settling for one-sided connections. You stop begging for reciprocation. You stop auditioning for spaces you've outgrown. You begin to choose people who mirror the way you've learned to treat yourself. With gentleness, with honesty, with consistency. This isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's about becoming rooted. A woman who knows her own worth no longer waits for someone to validate it. She validates herself with every kind choice, every boundary she honors, every dream she protects. And when friendships come, they are no longer lifelines, they are blessings. Additions, not necessities. Joys, not identities. The world may applaud the woman surrounded by crowds, but heaven watches the woman who sings over her own silence, who dances without an audience, who keeps believing in herself even when no one else does. She is the friend she was always longing for, and that makes her unstoppable. So if you find yourself in a season where no one seems to understand, where texts go unread and plans fall through, don't retreat into bitterness. Rise into deeper intimacy with yourself. Love yourself in the way you've loved others. Forgive yourself the way you've forgiven those who never said sorry. And keep showing up, not because anyone's watching, but because you matter. The woman who becomes her own friend doesn't fear loneliness anymore. She has discovered the most faithful companion of all, the one who never leaves, who always listens, who truly knows her, herself. And from that friendship, all other love begins to bloom.